Wait. You're getting nervous, man.
Mike Pence.
Please clap.
Welcome to the show, Around the Nation, DYT Nation, Jeff Waldorf here with you. Welcome to the show. It's Friday. Got a great Friday show for you guys today. We've got all sorts of different Trump-related stories, a couple with impeachment. We've got Ted Cruz being Ted Cruz, slimy, as usual. We're also going to talk about socialism. Scary. Very, very scary stuff. That socialism. In the context, of course, of Jamie Dimon. Then we're going to talk about a story broke from Ken Klippenstein over at The Nation. Great story on how the Biden campaign, more specifically, tried to get staffers to drive in some pretty bad weather. So, man, interesting stuff. And then, of course, the big story of the day, we're going to talk about Joe Rogan. Fascinating. So, fun stuff. And anyway, I guess you probably already noticed that I have this on my soundboard because I had to.
Wait. You're getting nervous, man.
And then, yes, Mayor Pete's please clap moment. I didn't actually do that, but I should get that. I do, after all, have this.
Please clap.
Yeah. So, that laugh though. So somebody took that clip and just the laugh and had it on repeat. It's cursed. It's terrible. Anyway, so that's fun. We got a fun show for you guys today. So stick around. Please like and share the stream if you haven't already as well. Super important that you do that. Super helpful that you do that. Of course, always as usual, super chats. People who do super chats, of course, get their comments or questions answered and read first, because that's you showing you support the show. And then member comments, of course. And then finally, you have people who are not members. I like to answer some of those questions or read some of those comments as well. So that's one way you can help the show, super chat. Another way, of course, is Q bounties as well. I answered a few of those last week. Those are always fun to do as well. Okay, anyway, let's move on. It's funny. I had to switch out my chair today. So funny story, right? So I had this chair that I was normally sitting in, right? And I'm in this chair I've had for about 3 years. About 3 years, and it now is broken with my fat ass sitting on it for so long that it now leans to the left. So, left, right? It's my left. So it leans down like this. So it's very uncomfortable. Yet I'm such a big lefty that even my chairs lean to the left now. Awesome. So anyway, I had to switch it out, and so I feel a little shorter today because it's not that tall of a chair. So you don't notice is my legs are all scrunched up. No, I'm kidding. Not really, but I do feel a little shorter since it does stand a little bit lower. So that's just something I figured that you guys would find was somewhat interesting. The things you have to do. Okay. Anyway, how's the cat? Good. He's doing great. He's a very good kitty. That's all I have to say. He's a very good kitty. Very good. Let's see. Super chat here from What Do You Mean says Australian American flags at half-mast for the 3 American heroes lost their lives in the water bomber plane crashed. The families, I'm sorry. So this didn't get talked about a lot, but there were 3 American firefighters who went over to fight the bushfires in Australia, who unfortunately lost their lives when their plane crashed. So, yes, thank you for that. What do you mean? And yes, look, I mean, what else can you say? These people were heroes, and they were doing the right thing, and it's unfortunate that they lost their lives. All right. So anyway, thank you for that. Let's move on. Let's get into the stories. Again, I feel short. All right. Anyway. President Donald Trump really wants to be acquitted for obstruction of justice and abuse of power. Let me start that again. President Trump really wants to be acquitted for obstruction of Congress and abuse of power. And in order to do so, abuses his power and obstructs Congress. Ironic. Anyway, now, according to CBS News, citing a confidant of the president, Trump has apparently threatened Republican senators to vote for his acquittal or their, quote, head will be on a pike. Okay, wow. Is he slightly worried about this? I think he might be slightly worried about impeachment, which is really odd to me, right? Because look, I've been following this. This whole impeachment trial in the Senate has been massively slanted in his favor. So, why are you worried about this? And let me give you some examples of how it's slanted. Republicans, Mitch McConnell's blocked witnesses, right? So no witnesses, right? Don't have enough for it, votes for it. The Democrats, so they can't bring in witnesses. They blocked the subpoena of documents. Half of them walked out while Adam Schiff was making his case. So they were not listening to him. So they didn't care. I don't know, man. I think he's got this whole Senate trial thing locked down. Crazy. Mitch McConnell, look, we know Mitch McConnell had no intention of making this an actual trial. Lindsey Graham, even the so-called moderates like Mitt Romney, who gave lip service, they all ultimately support Donald Trump. So what's Donald Trump worried about? Weird. I mean, look, it could be because he did it. He knows he did it. He knows there's evidence of him doing it. That's why they won't allow anything into the actual Senate trial. He knows that Adam Schiff actually did a pretty good job at laying out the case against him. Anybody with 2 brain cells, by the way, knows that asking a foreign country to interfere in our elections is straight up wrong. So I don't know, man. Everybody can see, by the way, as soon as Biden was considered to be Donald Trump's biggest competition at the time, he was polling the highest against Donald Trump, and the highest in the Democratic primary, right? That Donald Trump started caring suddenly about this corruption in Ukraine, right? And that's it, right? And it's funny because he had spent the last 3 years doing his own corruption. For example, letting his kids sit in while he's discussing things with world leaders and allowing those kids to get special deals. Or, for example, remember the story with the airport that routes business traffic to one of his hotels in exchange for increased military traffic? Or how about him charging his own campaign to host political events at his own personal properties? Oh, no, we don't make any money off that. BS. Why don't you release your tax returns and maybe we can see if you've been making any money off this? Or, for example, his plan to use the Doral Bedbug Resort as a future G7 meeting place, which, by the way, that he originally planned on doing that. The press got caught wind of it. Republican senators and Republican congressmen started saying, whoa, no, dude, that's too obvious of corruption. We can't have that. And then Trump says, fine. We're not going to do it at the Doral, even though it would have been tremendous. Yes, tremendous for the bed bugs. Would have been fantastic. On and on. Donald Trump is engaged in massive personal corruption. And here's the thing. He's never got caught for it. Now, other people around him have gotten caught for it. I mean, the greatest example here is his own personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, who is currently serving prison time for campaign finance violations that he did on behalf of Donald Trump. So you want to talk personal corruption, right? Donald Trump is dripping with personal corruption. And that's what this trial is about. This is not about Ukrainian corruption related with Joe Biden. Joe Biden has his own issues. I agree that Hunter Biden should not have been on that board. Now, is anything that he did illegal? No. Unethical? Absolutely. And should it be illegal? Let's have a discussion, right? Let's have a discussion about nepotism, right? I'm sure that'll turn out very well for Donald Trump and Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner. And so, yes, let's have those conversations. Oh, you don't want to have that conversation. Oh, you just want to keep it about Joe and Hunter Biden. Oh, but actually, they don't even really want to do that because, look, the Senate Republicans have enough votes to subpoena Hunter Biden to go speak. Why don't they ask him? Mitch McConnell says, nah, no, we're not going to ask Hunter Biden to show up. Well, why is that? That's fascinating. Gee, I wonder. No, here's the thing. What Donald Trump really wanted was a public announcement on CNN of an investigation into the Bidens. Why? Why just the public announcement? Again, he didn't really even want an investigation. He just wanted the announcement on CNN. It's because back in 2016, when he was running against Hillary Clinton, James Comey came out and he said, we're going to do a public investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails. And he thinks, oh, well, that helped me win the election. And so, yes, I want the same thing to happen to Joe Biden or something similar, public announcement of an investigation so that can help me win the election. That's what that is. Donald Trump wants to win. Of course he does. That's all he talks about is we need to win. We're not winning anymore. I need to win. Right. And so Donald Trump's the kind of guy that will do anything he can to win. And so, and of course, the reason that he goes so far as cheating is that he's never, ever had to face any consequences before. Ever. And so now he's resorting to vague threats against the Senate. But now, do I think these are physical threats? No, of course not. I know some people are like, ooh, physical threat. You're threatening a congressman. No. No, what this is that this is threatening to use basically to speak out and use his Twitter account against these senators. And the last thing that they want is for Trump to talk bad about them, to tweet about them, right? They're so scared to go up against Donald Trump's rabid fan base and their own voters, which are one and the same thing, really, that they will allow a criminal president to slide. They have officially put Donald Trump over party and over their own country. Cowardice, man. That's who these cowards really, really are. So they're going to continue to do everything they can to help President Trump, despite, of course, the evidence that they will not allow into the trial. And then, once they have acquitted him, to move on to cutting taxes more for their donors and more deregulation. Because at the end of the day, the donors are who they really work for. Pretty clear on that. Okay. Cold coffee. Yum. All right, moving on. Now, apparently, Senator Ted Cruz did not like being asked if he agrees with what President Donald Trump had done in trying to extort the leaders of Ukraine. So now, during a dinner break in the impeachment trial on Thursday, Cruz had talked to some reporters. Well, these reporters were actually shouting questions, and so he decided to not answer some of them. CNN's Mano Raju asked if he approved of Trump's conduct and agrees the call was perfect, as the president said. Cruz had replied, quote, "You asked a question last night. Let me let someone else ask a question." Okay. Now, Raju got shut down. Okay, so there's a New York Times reporter that was standing right next to him. So he asked this question, and it happened to be the exact same question. If Cruz agreed with what Donald Trump had done in Ukraine. Now, that is a fairly simple question, right? So, I mean, look, if you want to ask somebody, hey, who, by the way, didn't do this, right? As the president-elect, oh, it was a perfect call. I didn't do anything wrong, whatever. Well, then you should be able to answer, yes, I do agree with what the president had done because I was looking into corruption, right? That's the argument that they're using. No, this wasn't to go after Joe Biden, my political opponent. No, this was to investigate actual allegations of corruption in Ukraine and the government. And we think that Joe Biden and Hunter Biden are incredibly corrupt, and they were having a negative impact in Ukraine. And so that's why we held up the aid. It was perfectly legal, 100%. So that's their argument. So Ted Cruz should be able to say, yes, no, I do agree with the president. It was a perfect call. There was nothing wrong with it. It was not any sort of extortion, and it was not for personal political gain. Now, did he say that? Nope. He then took a different question from someone else and then ran off. Oops. Coward. Absolute coward. If you are looking for a profile in courage against Donald Trump in the Republican Party, you are not going to find one. Remember, Ted Cruz had already bent the knee. And this is fun, right? So you guys remember during the Republican primary back in 2015, when Ted Cruz was actually running against Donald Trump. And he basically called his wife ugly, said that his father had killed JFK or was part of the conspiracy to kill JFK. The most vicious, heinous things, right? And then, well, what happened? I mean, first Ted Cruz is like, no, I'm going to stand up. I'm going to be a man. I'm going to go after Donald Trump. What happened? He bent the knee. That's what happened. He bent the knee. And so definitely not a profile in courage. And I'll explain to you why later on, why Ted Cruz bent the knee. But here's the thing. It's not just Cruz. It's every Republican senator. Here's the thing, right? There are no Republican senators that are going to vote against Donald Trump. All these Republican senators, they know that it's wrong, and they will still vote to acquit the president because, look, they all agree that they need to acquit in order to protect their jobs. And that's what this is. And so they do that by rigging the rules. Mitch McConnell said, no witnesses, and we're not going to subpoena any documents. And look, the Senate rules put forward by McConnell, and I went through these before, right? These rules, again, meant that you had to vote on, and since Republicans have the majority, you were not going to get a vote on the witnesses or a vote to subpoena documents. Every single amendment that the Democrats put on these rules was flatly rejected by the Republican majority. That means no witnesses. That means no documents. Republicans are too afraid to bring in any witnesses, even their own. They won't bring in Hunter Biden. I mean, they don't even have the votes to bring in Hunter Biden, which, by the way, he would add absolutely nothing to this case of any sort of relevance. He didn't break any laws, American or Ukrainian. Now, is what he did shady? Yes, he took a bunch of money so that people in the business in Ukrainian gas could possibly try to influence Joe Biden. Possibly. Well, oh, good. There's no evidence that any of that money did influence Joe Biden. And look, unfortunately, that's not illegal. We have politicians that get influenced by money all the time. And that's the other thing. That's the rub here, right? There are no Republicans that wouldn't do the exact same thing if they had the chance. These Republicans, though, they don't want to go on the record as going after Hunter Biden or Joe Biden on that issue because it's very likely that a lot of these Republicans did something similar. They've gotten money for influence. They've gotten legal bribes from wealthy donors and corporations. That's how our system works. And Donald Trump has used that system all for personal gain. He's done nothing but rig the system for personal gain. and use our rigged system for personal gain. And the Republican Party, again, is just as guilty for doing so as a whole. And I also want to mention how the Democratic Party also works in a similar way. Our system is corrupt. So if you really want to target corruption, why not go after the billionaires and the corporations that are interfering with and buying our elections? Oh, right. There's a reason that they don't do that, because that's how they benefit. That's how they get into power. Ted Cruz himself, by the way, was bought by Robert and Rebecca Mercer, the Mercer family. Now, they supported Ted Cruz's run for president before they ended up going to Trump. They're also tied with Cambridge Analytica. And so when Trump started winning, well, they told Ted Cruz, hey, you better stop speaking against Donald Trump. You need to fall in line. And again, what happened? He bent the knee. Ted Cruz knows his place. That's why there's that sad, sad picture of Ted Cruz phone banking for Donald Trump. We all know that. So anyway, this is why Ted Cruz refuses to answer any questions. He knows who owns him. It's Donald Trump. It's the donors. What a pathetic, slimy human being that Ted Cruz is, as well as the rest of these politicians. Go ahead and run from these questions, you coward. Show the voters who you really are. Although, again, if they're Republican voters and they're Trump supporters, they might not care. They might vote for you anyway. Okay. Moving on here. Switching gears. It's not going to surprise you that the head of JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon, is not a fan of socialism.
I don't think they understand. Honestly, I don't think people understand what socialism is. Socialism is when the government controls companies. There is no example where the government controls companies, they do it well, and they don't start to use it for votes, satisfying people. They don't even want competition, because if we're two government companies, why have competition? They do it for jobs and votes. They have bad allocation of capital. Most state-owned enterprises don't do a particularly good job. Just take a look around the world, and they become corrupt over time. That does not mean that capitalism is perfect. It doesn't mean that every public company is perfect. No, there are flaws.
Do you think that Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren are socialists in the construct that you talked about it, or in the construct of this idea of a democratic socialist, which is something that may feel more European in some ways?
I don't want to talk about any particular people. But if you're talking about governments controlling corporations, that's socialism. You can do it in a small way, or you can do it in a big way.
Everything that he just explained also happens in capitalism. Oh, I mean, they become corrupt over time. Oh, really? Man, I didn't know that. Did you also know that these big companies, big corporations, can also become corrupt over time? And only put the needs of the shareholders over everything else? Did you also know that they create these gigantic monopolies? I know, right? Look here, let me give you an example here, right? If you don't think that we already have that kind of system here in the United States under capitalism, right? In my area, there is only one cable provider. It's Spectrum, right? If you don't like Spectrum, well, what can you do? I mean, sure, you could get like a Dish or something like that. But when it comes to cable providers, there's really nothing, right? And then in other areas, there's pretty much only Comcast. So if there's an outage, that's it. Same things. Power companies, right? There's no competition. There's no competition in a lot of these markets, in a lot of these places. And so when he talks about, so their lack of competition under socialism and leads to corruption and all that stuff. Well, yeah, that also happens now. Look, he doesn't know what he's talking about. And there's actually a reason for that, right? So now he goes after socialism, and then he said, well, I'm not going to really comment on Bernie Sanders, right? Well, here's the thing. Bernie Sanders is not a socialist. He's a democratic socialist. Now, here's the thing on, because he was talking about this in the context of millennials, right? Oh, more millennials or younger people happen to be thinking that socialism is better. You know why? It's because we grew up under this system of capitalism. We grew up in a system where our wages are low. We have no health care. We're drowning in student loan debt. We know we associate that with capitalism. It's actually crony capitalism, and so we're in that system, and we understand what that is. Does Jamie Dimon understand what that is? There's people in J.P. Morgan, people on Wall Street. Do they understand that? No, they don't, because they're paid not to. They've made money off the system. Their friends are all rich off this system, and so of course they want to keep it, and they want to bring up how socialism is so bad. And all these negative things will happen under socialism, which, by the way, those very same negative things that are supposed to happen under socialism have already happened under capitalism. And so let me give you an example here, right? Half of all Americans work low-wage jobs. Millions of people go without health insurance. Millions more who have insurance can't afford to go to the doctor because of their deductibles, right? That's the system. Does any of that affect Jamie Dimon? No, it does not. But guess what? Taxing him just a little bit more to guarantee health care to every American, or to guarantee that every American can get a higher education, which should be just part of education. Where do you fund it K through 12? Why not fund it through K through 16, right? Those extra 4 years covering a public college or university. And those are optional. Why not? Well, it's because it'll impact his wealth just a little bit. And by the way, if there are more people getting degrees, especially from these, some of these more prestigious public colleges and universities, well, then how's people like Jamie Dimon going to feel more better than everyone else? Can't have that. Obviously can't have that. Better people die without health care, or not be able to afford their education, or be buried in a mountain of debt, than to tax Jamie Dimon just a little bit. Look, now here's the problem. It's not that Jamie Dimon doesn't believe in socialism, right? Which, by the way, that's not what Bernie Sanders is proposing. He's a democratic socialist. So, I'll explain a little bit more, but to the point, the government is not taking over the means of production, right? Because that's what is socialism. The workers taking over the means of production. It's not the government taking over the means of production. It's the workers. It's the working class. That's socialism, right? And so he doesn't understand what that means. What Bernie Sanders wants to do is to have the government provide health insurance to every American. That's it. Not health care. It's not going to take over the healthcare sector, which, by the way, they do in the UK, and it seems to work pretty well under the NHS, right? No, it's health insurance. So the government would be the primary insurer. Now, that would actually make it better. Oh, but what are you talking about? There's not going to be any competition anymore. Is there any competition in health insurance right now? Is any of that competition that happens right now between health insurance companies meaningful whatsoever? No, they all still don't cover a lot of things. You still have these crazy in-network, out-of-network BS, right? Where you could get surprised or hit with a surprise bill, even if you go to a hospital that is part of your network, which is insane, because you should be able to go to any hospital since you have insurance. No, only certain hospitals or certain doctors, deal with certain insurance companies. So if you go to a hospital, or if you happen to have an emergency in a place that has a hospital that's not part of your network, then your insurance isn't even going to cover you. What the hell is that? What is that? That makes absolutely no sense. And even if that hospital is in your network, you can still have a doctor that's not. And so you'll get a surprise bill on that. Oh, sorry, we refuse to cover it. Well, why? That's because you weren't at the right geographical place and have the right doctor that is part of your network that happened to treat you when you got, fell off your bike and broke your leg or whatever, right? Sorry, not going to cover it. Oh, that's ridiculous. That's barbaric. And what the hell kind of system is that? That's the system that we have under capitalism, right? What we would have under democratic socialism is a guarantee of health care free at the point of service for every single American, and to extend education for the next 4 years for every single American that chooses to go to college and to get a higher education. That's not a takeover of private industry, right? That's not the government coming in to taking over Nike to make sneakers, which I wouldn't want that anyway. And no democratic socialist would. And what socialists actually want is for the workers to be able to be on the boards and to take over the companies instead of one capital owner to have everybody own a stake in that company. So look, they don't know what they're talking about. Nobody seems to understand what socialism actually is, or democratic socialism, or social democracy, which is like FDR. But I will tell you that there is one form of socialism Jamie Dimon knows 100% about, and that is the socialism for the rich. See, JP Morgan Chase had been fined $13 billion for mortgage fraud back in 2008 for causing that crisis, right? That's when the economy blew up. Well, they got a $25 billion taxpayer-funded bailout in 2008. So they were fined $13 billion and then were given $25 billion in taxpayer money. Then, after we bailed them out, right, as taxpayers, they made, in 2018, a record $3.7 billion in profit. They got bailed out. We didn't. They used those savings, by the way, to buy back billions of dollars in stocks. I mean, they went and they bought $55 billion in their own stock to drive up their own stock prices. Their company's not more profitable. They just artificially inflated their own stock. They created a bubble. You know what happens to bubbles? They burst. You know what happens when a bubble bursts in the economy? Well, I mean, just go back to 2008. That also burst. That was a bubble. Go back to the dot-com bubble. That also burst. And guess what that meant? It meant millions of Americans losing their jobs. Millions of Americans losing possibly their retirement benefits and their health care and everything else. And in 2008, it meant millions of Americans losing their homes, having them underwater, having them foreclosed. But at the same time, it also meant people like Jamie Dimon had a golden parachute, which means their company falls apart, but they escape scot-free and with billions of dollars in profit that they can take home, that they can put right in their pocket. That's what happens. That's what happens. That's the kind of socialism Jamie Dimon absolutely loves. And you could see why, because he makes all that money, puts it in his pocket, his company in ashes all of around him, and he just walks right out, fistful of dollars. That's socialism for the rich. The rest of us get rugged individualism, right? And you wonder why younger people have such a negative association with capitalism. That said, you can actually have a system where capitalism and socialism working together. It's called a mixed market system. And I'm in favor of that because it tends to work best. For example, you can go to the Scandinavian countries, right? They've got a strong private sector. They got good private property rights, but they also have labor protections next to socialized public goods like education and healthcare. And they don't have that much higher taxes than a normal middle-class person here does in the United States. Obviously, the rich pay far more, but the middle class pays roughly about the same as the middle class here and gets all these extra benefits for their money instead of that money being funneled to defense contractors and giant multinational corporations. Again, the amount of like welfare, corporate welfare that we send to these companies is insane, is immeasurable how much we spend on giveaways, tax giveaways, incentives to rich corporations. Oil companies, for example, we give them billions of dollars in subsidies. Why? I don't know why. They don't need it. They're the wealthiest corporations on the face of the planet. And by the way, they are actually also actively harming the planet through their actions. Why are we continuing to fund them? Why are we giving them billions of dollars? And it's because the system is rigged. The system is rigged against regular people, against the middle class, and is rigged in favor of people like Jamie Dimon. So please don't talk to me about socialism, right? It's going to be terrible. It's going to be like Venezuela. We're going to be eating rats. Now, some of us in America are getting close to that point under this system, while fat cats like Jamie Dimon continue to get more and more and more and more money. And that's the problem here. All right. All Bernie Sanders and Democratic socialists want to do is to bring us in line with the Nordic model, the Scandinavian model, so that at least everybody has a chance, everybody has healthcare, everybody has education, and that, everybody ends up doing better, even rich people. Okay. Anyway. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a break. We'll come back. We've got more stories, of course, but quick break. Thanks some patrons. Thanks some channel members. Maybe answer a couple of audience questions or comments, and we'll do all that. Come right back. Round the Nation.
Wait. You're getting nervous, man.
Mike Pounds.
Welcome back to the show. Run the nation right here, TWT Nation. Joe Fuller here with you. Okay, so I got a couple of super chats here. Actually, one here from Sarge Tech says, as far as Greta's concerned, she's getting more respect from world leaders than Trump ever will. To leaders of other countries, Trump is a clown. Man, there's actually a video of Putin and Assad also making fun of Donald Trump. That's pretty great. Saying that he will have a road to Damascus moment. And of course, that means changing your views. Very simply, right? Because there's that story about the road to Damascus. But anyway, that's fun. And of course, we've had other videos of other world leaders making fun of Trump. What happened? I thought Obama was the laughingstock of the world. Right. It just happens to be Donald Trump. Okay. Anyway, so thank you, Sarge Tech. I want to thank some patrons now. Patreon.com/TYTNation. I want to thank Abram Tao and Adam Felson for being patrons. Patreon.com/TYTNation. Like I said, members Martin and Darla Vanderflute. So thank you. Members and patrons help sustain the show. You guys sustain us. This month has been absolutely terrible. January's generally are. So the more that you can help us out, the better off we'll be. Because man, it's getting a little tight this month. So you can help us out. Patreon.com/TWTNation or do the super chats or Q bounties, because all that stuff helps to sustain the show. All right, guys. I didn't really take any comments. I just wanted to address wait times. So there are people that will come and claim that in places like Canada, there's large waiting times for essential life-saving surgery. That's not at all true. There is wait times for specialists, and there are wait times for non-emergency care, but there's no wait times generally for emergency care. There's no wait times here in America for that. There's also no wait times in these other countries with socialized medicine. So remember, this is life-saving surgery. There are no wait times in these socialized countries. Again, and just like here in America, we do have wait times as well. Like, for example, I want to see a specialist. It's going to take me a month or two to get scheduled to see that specialist. I want to call up my doctor and have an appointment. It's going to take me about 2 weeks to actually get into the doctor. That's generally been my experience with my healthcare. Look, the ridiculous talking point that, oh no, you're going to have more waiting times in other countries. Simply not true. Simply not true. Again, for other specialist care, yeah, there are waiting times. There's also waiting times here. So, all right. Anyway, let's move on here. Let's get to a troubling development. Okay. Now, there's a recording that was reviewed by ABC News, and it appears to have captured President Trump talking to his associates about getting rid of the ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch. So now, I do not have a copy of this tape. There's only one copy so far, and it happens to be in the hands of the Southern District of New York and federal prosecutors. So now, this had allegedly happened at a small gathering that included Lev Parnas and Igor Fruman. Now, these two former business associates of Trump's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani. Now, of course, they are in a little bit of trouble for breaking campaign finance laws. Lev Parnas, of course, has famously turned and flipped on Donald Trump and is now talking about this issue. So now sources familiar with the recording said that it was made during an intimate April 30th, 2018 dinner at the Trump International Hotel in D.C. Now, that recording, which has been reported by ABC News, but is not currently in their possession, basically has Trump on tape urging people around him to get rid of the ambassador, And by the way, they do have it in their possession, but they have not released it, the actual recording. Apologize for the mix up there. But he is said to have said, quote, "Get her out tomorrow. I don't care. Get her out tomorrow. Take her out. Okay. Do it." Okay. Well, look, that sounds pretty bad, right? Now, what precipitated this? Well, on the recording, the two associates of Giuliani were telling the president that she had been talking smack about him. That is not verbatim. Now, that directly led to the remarks by the president. So, oh, hey, look, they're saying bad things about you, man. She's saying bad things. You should probably fire her. So what's interesting is who made this tape. Apparently, it was Fruman. So now Fruman hadn't really been mentioned all that much before because a lot of the focus has been on Lev Parnas for him speaking out. So now you have Igor Fruman, who apparently taped the president during this meeting where they had egged him on to fire Marie Yovanovitch. Who does that? Oh, I know who does that. The best people. He does the best people. So, yes, the best people apparently make tapes of private conversations. Everybody does that. At least everybody around Donald Trump. I mean, how many more tapes or alleged tapes are there going to be of Donald Trump saying something ridiculous? What is this, like the third tape? I think there's Access Hollywood, right? There was Trump talking to Cohen about the hush money payments. How many more? I mean, how many more times is this idiot going to let himself get taped? Seriously, how much more is going to come out? Okay, anyway, to be fair, if Donald Trump didn't surround himself with criminals, he probably wouldn't get taped all the time because that's what criminals do. I'm just saying. But again, the best people. All right, there's more. Now, Parnas and Trump, while discussing Yovanovitch, had this conversation. Parnas appears to say that the biggest problem here, I think where we need to start, is we got to get rid of the ambassador. She is still left over from the Clinton administration, which, by the way, that's not true. Yovanovitch actually served in the State Department since Ronald Reagan. Parnas can be heard telling Trump. She's basically walking around telling everybody, wait, he's going to get impeached. Just wait. Well, look, if she actually did say that, well, then she would be right because Donald Trump literally just got impeached. Okay, anyway. So now, here's the thing. Giuliani, Parnas, Fruman, they were all working together, as well as some Ukrainians, right, that were corrupt. Shock. They were all pushing to get Yovanovitch removed. Why? Well, for Parnas and Fruman, they had business interests in Ukraine. She might have stopped those business interests because she fought against corruption. So they get Trump here, right, and have this meeting, and they say, "Oh man, look the stuff she's talking about you, man. She's saying all this smack, and saying you're going to get impeached. And remember, this is 2018, right? And then they say, well, look, she was a Clinton person anyway. Yeah, remember how you hate the Clintons? You should totally get rid of this woman." And of course, here's what happened. The moron did. Now, to be fair, he waited about a year to do so. But still. Now, Yovanovitch said that the decision was, quote, made based on unfounded and false claims by people with clearly questionable motives that she was disloyal to Donald Trump. She was not disloyal to Donald Trump. She had just done her job to help Ukrainians fight corruption in their government. And, of course, the people that had the questionable motives were Fruman, Giuliani, and Parnas. They specifically wanted to get into the Ukrainian gas market, and I don't think they were above doing corruption in order to get there. Okay. That's why Giuliani, Parnas, and Fruman worked together. Trump wanted his own corruption. He wanted to dig up dirt on... No, he didn't want to actually dig up dirt on Biden, but he wanted a public announcement that Ukraine was going to dig up dirt on Joe Biden. He wanted that out on CNN. And so here you had this little unholy alliance of people that happen to be up to no good. I know, right? It's kind of a good thing that they're too stupid to not get caught. So now Parnas, when he flipped, he turned over text messages, right, between he and Giuliani. Now, one of them is pretty interesting. It's Giuliani bragging about how he's so effective at trying to get rid of the ambassador. Quote, "Boy, I'm so powerful, I can intimidate the entire Ukrainian government. Please don't tell anyone I can't get the crooked ambassador fired, or I did 3 times and she's still there." That's a weird message. Weird flex, right? Okay, whatever. Go ahead and brag more. Super smart, right? These are WhatsApp messages, by the way, and there was a bunch of them. And look, some of those messages were pretty scary, actually. I talked about that. Parnas, I mean, they knew her physical location. They had her tracked, tracking her in real time. And so they had her access to her phone, her computer. They knew when it was on. They knew when it wasn't on. And they were able to track her in physical real time. That's really, really freaking weird, right? And it makes me think that they were considering possibly an attempt on her life, like a mob hit. At one point, it's like, well, you can buy anything in Ukraine. If you've got the money, you can do anything. I mean, that's creepy, right? And so she had talked about, by the way, being warned about her security, right? And so we shouldn't rule out the fact that she might have been in danger. And it's all because of Donald Trump and his cronies that wanted to serve both their financial and political interests. Gross. Okay. A couple more stories here. So we're probably going to go over, guys. All right. Now, the Iowa caucuses are pretty important. All the campaigns right now are vigorously campaigning in order to get out the vote in the nation's very first primary contest. So now, I don't think I need to explain this, but it's pretty cold in Iowa at this time of year. And sometimes the weather can get a little bit dicey, which can impede the campaign's efforts to get out the vote, to spread that message, right? Now, one such campaign facing this problem was the Biden campaign. And I think all of them were facing this campaign as they're trying to get around the state. And sometimes the weather just didn't work out. Now, the Biden campaign's solution to this, though, especially after some recent storms, was to suspend their inclement weather campaign in order to get staffers back out on the roads so that they can campaign for Joe Biden. Now, this has been reported by Ken Klippenstein for The Nation. And they said that the policy had allowed people to avoid driving during potentially hazardous weather conditions. However, since it was so busy at the time, they decided to suspend that. Now, this was according to text messages obtained by Klippenstein from the campaign. Quote, "Hey guys, all weather," and this is from Kay Glad, by the way, Biden's regional organizing director for Iowa. "Hey guys, all weather policy is dissolved throughout the entire state because we have 5 weeks left until the election. If it feels like unsafe driving conditions, then talk to me separately. But quite frankly, I don't want to hear any complaints because you know how important this is and how much time we have left." Man, I am feeling some very big, "Hey, you still going to come to work, right?" vibes from this lady. Like, imagine, mountain of snow. You still come to work, right? That's what that is. That's what that is. And so Glad added that, quote, "By showing an ability to be adaptable, flexible, and willing to do what you've been hired to do, then that is the most basic threshold of demonstrating your ability to lead others. Every single day is an audition for post-Iowa." That's if of course, you happen to survive that, which unfortunately a couple of people didn't. So now my philosophy is I don't care if it's not safe to drive, don't drive. Don't make people drive. That's how accidents happen. Jesus. And by the way, the Biden campaign, look, the Biden campaign, Joe Biden himself has lived through tragedy of car accidents, right? In 1972, Biden's then wife and daughter were killed in a fatal car accident. A truck had broadsided them when they were shopping for a Christmas tree. And so they had died in a car accident. So you would think the campaign would be a little bit more sensitive to that, as he tends to bring that up in the campaign trail. Now, look, to be fair, this isn't from Joe Biden himself, right? This is one of their campaign people. Now, the text messages, however, were provided to the nation by a Biden staffer. Now, this Biden staffer gave it on the condition of anonymity, since they were not authorized to speak for the campaign. The staffer also said that there had been at least 5 different car accidents among the campaign's Iowa staffers between Christmas and New Year's Day alone. Now, that's important, right? This is a campaign staffer, somebody who believes in Joe Biden, saying, I don't like what our campaign is having to do, running around the state in this terrible weather. Now, they cited a recent car accident that actually resulted in the death of a Warren campaign volunteer. The staffer described other campaign workers as fearful of another potential accident. Again, staffers and volunteers to these campaigns. Now, one person that died, this is the Warren person, was Zachary Pressburg. Now, he was a field organizing fellow and volunteer for the Warren campaign. He died when his car was struck by a semi when he tried to pass another vehicle. He was 22 years old. So, in 2016, Braden Joplin, an Iowa staffer for Ben Carson's presidential campaign, died in a car accident while trying to navigate icy roads, which left 3 other campaign staff injured. Joplin was only 25 years old. So, no. I understand how campaigns are important, right? And look, I think it's pretty important that Bernie Sanders win the Iowa caucus and go on to win New Hampshire. But let's just say that this, right? Even though campaigns are important, they are not worth dying over. Now, look, obviously, other Biden campaign officials agreed with this. That's why he gave the text messages to Ken Klippenstein. And so now Klippenstein reports that this was taken care of pretty quickly. A Biden campaign official confirmed that GLAAD had suspended the weather policy, but said that she had acted unilaterally and was subsequently reprimanded, and her team was given proper guidance. So Julie Krieger, Biden's Iowa communications director, said this in a comment, quote, "Our campaign's most important asset is the staff working tirelessly around the country to help Joe Biden defeat Donald Trump and restore the soul of our nation." Ugh. I know, right? But hey, look, at least she's like, hey, man, look, our staffers are important. So we're at least making sure that they don't drive in these icy roads. And that's actually a good thing, right? That's why she says we always prioritize their safety and well-being and put in place policies both in Iowa and nationally to ensure that they remain safe in hazardous weather conditions. The Nation also contacted the Sanders, Buttigieg, Warren, and Klobuchar campaigns to ask if they have the same kind of policy, implement weather policies to protect staffers. Now, the only one that responded so far is actually a Klobuchar campaign official. Now, here's what they said. Extreme weather conditions have previously resulted in the campaign having staffers work from home. When inclement weather causes hazardous conditions, we make it a point for members of the campaign to consider personal safety first when evaluating their ability to report to work. So, good on that campaign. So, look, as much as I've heard of Amy Klobuchar mistreating her campaign staff, at least she doesn't make them go out and drive in icy weather and get themselves killed. Great. And also, look, credit for Biden for correcting the issue. These staffers have enough to worry about than getting into car accidents in a blizzard, campaigning around the state. So now I give you that, statement as a segue into this, labor conditions, according to Matt Cain, who served as an Iowa field organizer for President Obama in his first campaign, said the labor conditions for campaign staffers are abysmal. And he cites long hours and low pay. Quote, the expectation was 14 to 16-hour workdays, 4 hours of sleep is pretty common. These conditions, by the way, have led to campaign staff unionizing, which I think is a great thing. In May of 2019, for example, Bernie Sanders' campaign became the first presidential campaign staff in U.S. history to become part of a union, and is now represented by the United Food and Commercial Workers Local 400. Now, Bernie Sanders was the first, not the only. Hear you what other campaigns following, for example, the campaign staff of Elizabeth Warren and Pete Buttigieg are now both represented by the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers 2320. And then you also have Booker, who dropped out, and Klobuchar, who's still there, represented by the Teamsters Local 238. So, hey, look, great. Unionization for campaign workers is a good thing. Unionization of workers in general is a great thing. Wonderful, right? So, look, whoever you're campaigning for, and just remember, like if you come up across this kind of policy that says, oh, no, what we're going to do is we're going to make you guys drive all over for this campaign, that you might want to reevaluate why you're following this campaign, because it's not worth your life and you do have labor rights. So big props to Ken Klippenstein for doing this report. He does great work over at The Nation, so check him out. All right, one more story here. Let's go to, I guess, our controversial story, Joe Rogan. All right. A huge internet firestorm erupted after popular podcaster Joe Rogan made an endorsement of Senator Bernie Sanders. So now I'm going to show you a video that the Sanders campaign had cut of this endorsement. Take a look.
Who are you going to vote for in the primary?
I think I'll probably vote for Bernie. Him as a human being, when I was hanging out with him, and
Yeah.
I believe in him. I like him. I like him a lot. What Bernie stands for is a guy who, well, look, you could dig up dirt on every single human being that's ever existed if you catch them in their worst moment, and you magnify those moments, and you cut out everything else, and you only display those worst moments. That said, you can't find very many with Bernie. He's been insanely consistent his entire life. He's basically been saying the same thing, been for the same thing his whole life. And that, in and of itself, is a very powerful structure to operate from.
All right, so I just want to point out the irony of who he was talking to in that, who asked him that question. That's Barry Weiss. Barry Weiss is somebody who is not exactly a fan of Bernie Sanders. In fact, I think she despises Bernie Sanders. But anyway, so in that endorsement, I think he lays out a pretty simple reason to support Bernie Sanders. I like him. He's nice. He's consistent. And, you can dig up dirt on anybody, which ironically is what's happening today to Joe Rogan. But look, even if you do to Bernie Sanders, which a lot of establishment folks have tried, you can't really find anything that's so bad to make you not want to support Bernie Sanders. And so, look, it's pretty simple surface level stuff, but this is who Joe Rogan is. Joe Rogan is a regular person, right? He's a regular guy. He's not a political figure, right? Not really a super expert on anything. Well, okay, not entirely true. He's a comedian, and he's an MMA announcer. So you got to know, obviously, a lot about that. But a lot of the issues, he has a more surface level understanding, which is fine. And that's not a bad thing. I don't think Joe Rogan's a dumb person. I think he's a smart person. But I also think he's a regular dude, right? And I think that's his appeal. And part of what I can appreciate about him is that he has an open mind. He's generally pretty curious about different points of view and wants to have open conversations with lots of, different people. Now, there's people that I agree with, Kyle Kalinske. There are people that I completely disagree with that he's had on the show, Dave Rubin, Jordan Peterson, etc. Right? So there are views all across the political spectrum. Now, he appeals, and part of the appeal and part of why I actually do like this endorsement is that he talks to average people. He's the most popular podcaster in the country. So he has over 7 million subscribers. His show gets watched millions of times and listened to millions of times. Conservative, libertarian, progressive. He's got people on like Kyle, and he's also got terrible people that come onto his show. And so I disagree with some of his positions, obviously. He said some pretty terrible things in the past. He's had some pretty terrible positions, but I also agree with some of his good positions. And so, look, he's a mixed bag. And I think that's pretty much where most of the country is. I mean, he's representative of, I think, the average either non-political person or somebody who, is a little bit, I guess, a little bit conservative or libertarian or whatever, but average, right? And that's, again, why I'm okay with this. Okay. Now, again, he said some pretty ignorant things about trans people, mainly saying that, for example, trans women shouldn't compete in women's sports. Now, that's a conversation that I'd have. The trans women that I've seen, they look no different than other women. So I have no problem with that. And so look, let's have a conversation, right? But part of that conversation could be, okay, so what if we ban women that bodybuild, right? Who are much, much bigger than other women. Should we ban them from being in sports? Or how about women who are naturally tall, like the more Amazon type, right? Larger women with a bigger build. Should we ban them too because they're more like men or they're stronger than regular women? I mean, so where's that conversation, right? We should have a conversation on some of this stuff, and I think somebody like Joe Rogan would be more perceptive or more receptive into saying maybe we should allow them to compete. And so, look, it's about having a conversation. And that's what's important, is actually talking about this, right? And some of you might say, no, what Joe Rogan is saying is completely fine. And again, you can have a civil conversation about this, right? And I think really what's really important is, why don't we ask trans women? I mean, it's really important to get their perspective as well, and maybe have them talk to somebody like Joe Rogan or people like that. But look, anyway, this is, look, the conversation here, and actually having conversation and having views that, are considered to be controversial or taboo in, the political arena, is directly related to the blow up, right? And I think this is less about Joe Rogan and more actually about Bernie Sanders, because there are the same establishment people that talk about, hey, how dare you have a litmus test, saying, oh my God, how dare you accept this endorsement for Joe Rogan, who doesn't always agree with, you on all these other issues. Okay. That's an interesting thing. In fact, there's a lot of people that are supporting Elizabeth Warren, other liberals. They're attacking Bernie Sanders for accepting this endorsement. There's even Sanders supporters that find it problematic, and certainly for valid reasons on their own. Okay. That said, personally, I wouldn't turn it down. And why is that? It's because of the reach. Again, I think he's an average guy. He's the average perspective, right? A little bit of a dude, bro. But again, not a horrible thing. He does have a big following. These people in his following could actually be open to our message. So instead of driving them away for having some bad views, why not draw people in and actually change their minds? I know, right? Have a conversation. Whatever happened to progressives wanting to change hearts and minds? Again, you're not going to change the hardcore Trump supporters, right? Minds. But there are people there who might hold a couple of bad views, but also agree, like, oh, yeah, of course, rich people are screwing us over. Corporations should be taxed more. Hey, we should all have health care. Well, those are the people, that you can get on your side. And people that think the system is unfair or that have been left behind. Those are the people you can reach. And certainly Rogan has people who follow him or listen to his show that are more receptive to those ideas, but also might have some bad ideas about, for example, gay people or trans people. Those are things that we can change their minds on. And so that's the thing, right? That's the thing. The soul of progressivism is you take someone with ignorant views and you change their mind. And you use facts and you use logic and you appeal to their humanity and you change their mind. And so, look, if you want to change the mind of somebody who's against trans people, why don't you have them talk to somebody who is a trans person? Okay? So that would make sense to me. Talk to someone. Have the open conversation. Have them meet. Because I guarantee some of the most virulently anti-trans people or anti-gay people have never met a gay or trans person in their lifetime. Once you talk to them, once you get to know them, you realize that they're regular people who want the same things that you do. Life, happiness, all that stuff, success, etc. So let's talk about this. So let's have these open conversations and let's not completely dismiss everybody who has a view that is ignorant. We should try to educate them to make them more aware, make them see other viewpoints. That's it. That's what we should be doing. Not everybody's going to flip over to your side, obviously, but there are going to be some people who do. And so that's important. Being progressive is allowing people to be able to change and get better. If there is a chance to grow the progressive movement through this endorsement by appealing to people who might have a couple of problematic views or misguided views or are apolitical, then I say let's take it, let's bring them into the fold, and let's change their views. Let's make them better because we can change minds. And shouldn't that ultimately be the goal? The goal shouldn't just to beat Donald Trump. It should be to beat Trumpism. It should be to beat ignorance, right? We beat ignorance with truth and we come together as a working class movement of all colors, creeds, sexualities, everything else, right? We come together to make a better world for everybody else. That's the whole freaking point. And if you're not going to do that, if you're against that, then you're not on our team. You're on somebody else's. Okay. I think that's pretty simple. That's it. That's all I got time for you guys for. Thank you for going around the nation with me today. Thank you for the super chats, the comments. Please consider becoming a patron, patreon.com/TYDNation, or a channel member. Love you guys. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, guys. Have a great weekend. We'll see you back on Monday.
Why? You're getting nervous, man.
You're kicking me out the door. You're kicking me out the door.